Halloween night last year, I was handing out candy until around 10:30 p.m. By then the street was quiet, most porch lights off. I shut mine too, cleaned up, and went to bed. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of rustling outside my front door, plastic crinkling, like candy wrappers being handled. I figured some kids were late, so I peeked through the blinds. A single figure stood on my porch, still as stone, wearing a cheap plastic mask with no costume. At their feet was an empty candy bowl I didn't own. I blinked, and the rustling stopped. By the time I opened the door, the mask was lying on the mat. No one was there. Weeks ago, I got home from my night shift around 3:40 a.m. The stairwell in my building always smells like damp carpet, but that night it was stronger, almost sour. When I reached my door, I noticed my welcome mat was flipped upside down. I brushed it off, maybe a neighbor's kid messing around. But as I unlocked the door, I heard the faint sound of breathing from inside my apartment. Slow, steady, like someone asleep. I froze, key still in the lock, my heart hammering. I backed away and called the cops from the stairwell. They searched every corner. Nothing was missing, no one inside. The officer shrugged and left. When I stepped back in, the mat was flipped again. Happened last fall, around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was walking back from my friend's apartment, cutting through the alley behind the grocery store. It was freezing, and the air smelled like wet cardboard and cigarettes. About halfway through, I heard footsteps echoing mine, just a half beat off, like whoever it was wanted me to notice. I turned, but the alley was empty. My chest felt tight, so I sped up. That's when I saw it, a folded piece of paper sticking out of my jacket pocket. I hadn't felt anyone touch me. I pulled it out, just 3 words in shaky handwriting. Keep walking alone. I haven't used that alley since. Last Friday, I got into my car after leaving the gym around 11:15 p.m. The parking lot was mostly empty, lit by a buzzing light that kept flickering. When I opened the driver's door, I noticed the passenger seatbelt was buckled. I never buckle it. I live alone, and no one's been in my car for weeks. The seat smelled faintly of sweat, not mine. My stomach dropped. I unbuckled it with shaking hands, checked the back seat twice, then drove home with every mirror angled back. The next morning, I found a fresh receipt tucked into my cup holder. It was time-stamped 11:17 p.m. from the gas station 2 blocks from the gym. I hadn't been there. Last November, I stopped at the 24-hour laundromat near my apartment around 1:30 a.m. The place reeked of detergent and burnt dust from the old dryers, and it was empty except for a man sitting in the far corner. He wasn't doing laundry, just staring at the spinning machines, hands folded neatly on his knees. I tried not to look, but when I bent down to grab my clothes, I heard the soft creak of his chair. He was closer, same posture, same stare. My heart started pounding, so I shoved everything into my basket and left. The next morning, I found a single damp sock folded on my doormat. It wasn't mine. 2 nights ago, at 12:47 a.m., I was washing dishes when I heard faint humming coming from the backyard. It was slow, almost childlike, and didn't match any tune I knew. I turned off the faucet and listened. The humming stopped. I stepped closer to the back door, my bare feet sticking slightly to the tile, and caught a whiff of something damp and earthy, like wet soil. I flipped on the porch light, nothing but my empty yard. As I reached to lock the door, the humming started again, right behind me, low and steady, as if someone was leaning close to my ear. I spun around. The kitchen was empty. The porch light clicked off by itself. A few nights ago, around 11:45 p.m., I was folding laundry when I smelled something, like burning plastic, sharp and chemical. I checked the kitchen, nothing was on. Then, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Why don't you answer the door? I live alone. I looked outside, nothing. No cars, no people. The street was quiet except for the faint rustling of leaves in the breeze. Minutes later, the power went out. The whole house plunged into darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight and noticed muddy footprints leading from the front door to my bedroom window. I've been sleeping with the curtains closed ever since. Last night, at 1:22 a.m., I woke to the faint sound of my closet door sliding open. I never leave it open. At first, I thought it was the house settling, but then I heard slow, deliberate breathing, deep and steady, like someone trying not to be heard. My room smelled faintly of sweat and old fabric, heavy and stale. I didn't move. My phone was on the nightstand, but reaching for it felt impossible. The breathing stopped. A long minute passed before I heard the soft scrape of something dragging along the floor, moving toward the bed. I shut my eyes and stayed frozen until morning light. The closet was closed again. 2 nights ago, at 12:38 a.m., I was lying in bed scrolling on my phone when I heard my front door unlock. I froze. I live alone, and the deadbolt was definitely locked. The door didn't open right away. There was just the faint sound of someone breathing on the other side, slow and steady. My mouth went dry. Then the handle turned, just once, before stopping. After a minute of silence, I heard soft footsteps moving away, but not toward the street. They went down the hall, toward the back of the house. I didn't move until sunrise. When I checked the door that morning, the lock was still engaged, but there was a fresh set of muddy prints leading out. It's Halloween. I was driving home from a party just after midnight. The streets were almost empty, except for one kid walking alone in a cheap vampire costume. I slowed down. He couldn't have been older than 10. When my headlights passed over him, he turned his head toward me, but his mask had no eye holes. I pulled over instinctively, rolled my window down to ask if he was okay, but there was no kid. Just the costume lying in the road like it had been dropped seconds ago, still warm to the touch. My GPS said I'd been parked there for 23 minutes. 2 weeks ago, around 2:45 a.m., I woke up to a soft thud above my bedroom ceiling. At first I thought it was the old house settling, but then it came again, heavier, like someone shifting their weight. The attic door is in my hallway, and when I cracked my bedroom door, the air smelled faintly of dust and something sour, like sweat left in a gym bag. I grabbed my phone and whispered 911, but froze halfway through dialing. Another thud, closer this time, followed by the sound of something dragging. I backed into my room and locked the door. The cops arrived 20 minutes later. They found the attic door open. The ladder was still warm. No one was there. Yesterday, around 4:12 p.m., I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the faint sound of a chair scraping against the floor upstairs. I froze. I hadn't been upstairs all day. I grabbed a knife from the counter and slowly crept up, my socks whispering against the steps. The hallway was silent, but I noticed my bedroom door, usually wide open, was almost shut. I pushed it open with the tip of the knife. The air inside was warm, stale, and smelled faintly of sweat. Everything looked normal, except for my desk chair. It was angled toward the closet, and my phone, left charging on the nightstand, was now sitting on the seat, screen facing the door. The camera app was open. Last week, around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps on the hardwood floor outside my room. I live alone. At first, I thought it was my upstairs neighbor, but the steps were too clear, too close. Then came this faint dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled slowly across the floor. I lay frozen, barely breathing, staring at the gap under my door. That's when I noticed it, shadows shifting, blocking the faint glow from the hallway nightlight. Whoever it was just stood there. No knock, no movement, just waiting. After maybe 10 minutes, the shadows disappeared. In the morning, the nightlight was unplugged and set neatly in the middle of the hallway rug. Last night, around 2:40 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my front door creaking. I live alone, so I froze in bed and held my breath. For a solid minute, the house was silent except for my heartbeat. Then I heard faint, deliberate footsteps on the hardwood, slow, like someone was trying not to be heard. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, but before anyone picked up, the footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom. I swear I heard someone exhale. I sat there clutching a lamp like an idiot until the dispatcher answered. Police showed up 20 minutes later and found nothing. No forced entry, no signs anyone had been inside. But this morning, when I opened my bedroom door, there were muddy prints leading away from it. It was around 2:30 a.m. last Tuesday when I woke up to the faint creak of my front door. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment, and I know I locked it. I always triple-check. At first I thought maybe the building was settling, but then I heard slow, deliberate footsteps on the hardwood. My bedroom door was cracked just enough that I could see a sliver of the hallway. A shadow passed by. My phone was on the nightstand, but when I reached for it, the footsteps stopped, like whoever it was heard me. I stayed frozen, barely breathing, for what felt like forever. Then, the sound of the door closing, quiet, careful. I didn't move until sunrise. When I finally checked, the door was locked from the inside. It happened last Tuesday, around 2:40 a.m. I woke up to the sound of my front door unlocking. It was so faint, I almost thought I'd imagined it, until I heard the slow creak of it opening. I froze, listening. Footsteps, bare feet, crossed my living room floor. Then silence. I couldn't move. After 10 minutes of nothing, I finally grabbed a kitchen knife and checked every room. The door was closed, locked again. Nothing was missing. But on the inside of the door, scratched into the wood at eye level, were 4 words that hadn't been there before. You sleep too loud.